Good evening, everyone. Thank you for tapping into Critical Thoughts again. I'm your host, Braxton Smith, and I'm here to talk to you today about the recent speech delivered by none other than our President Barack Hussein Obama on gun control. He had a recent speech on gun control. I just wanted to start out by saying, bravo, Mr. President. Bravo on your stellar performance on tear jerking. Even you're bringing out all sorts of tears. Regular waterworks show for everyone. Sorry, Leo. Better luck next year on the Oscars. Barack's got it this year. Really, actually, he did a stellar performance on convincing everyone that gun control was the best way for America. Um, Meanwhile, over in the Middle East, though, drones are bombing and killing and murdering thousands of children. But here, let's talk today about the lives and the Sandy Hooks, all the children's lives there that matter. Because all the children over in the Middle East, I mean, let's face it, they don't really have souls, so they aren't worth talking about. But today we're talking about the children in America, the ones with actually that have souls. So first, I wanted to tackle the two biggest problems I had with Obama's deal. Was, for one, he's encroaching on our Second Amendment rights. Okay, I can go in circles with days and days about how we can debate that, but my other problem was the fact that he's issuing yet more executive orders because the Senate and the House of Representatives and the American people don't agree with his policies, but he agrees with his policies, and so he decides to unilaterally implement them onto the masses, and we the people have to deal with them. So hopefully he'll be called out on that. Hopefully he'll be halted. But in case there's a few of you out there that might be actually considering gun control as a good thing, I hope this video changes your mind on that. And I wanted to get into exactly what he said during the speeches and exactly why some of the things he said was a problem. All right, so first off, he wanted to say, or he did say, I want to make, and I quote, I want to make sure no one can go onto the internet and buy a weapon without doing a background check. Okay, so just so you know, for anyone out there that hasn't bought a gun yet, please try and go buy a gun. See how difficult it is. For one, you can't find them on the internet, and if you do find them on the internet, you do have to buy them through a gun store. So you buy them online, granted, but then you go to the gun store to make the purchase, to finalize it, and that is where they do their background search. So in case he was just trying to say just through the internet, that's a fallacy. You do have to do a background check. So he talks about all these common sense policies he's wanting to implement, and I have a problem with them, but a lot of people might find that common sense. These policies common sense, and agree with him, and I can understand why. The thing is they're already implemented, and I suppose he's just trying to get you to empathize with him. So he's throwing this stuff out as though it's not already so and that he's making it so, but it is so. All right. So he goes on to boast. He said, I taught constitutional law. I know a little bit about this, talking about, the Second Amendment rights and how he knows what's best for us. Keep in mind that time and again, he has taken away our constitutional rights. He has let the things like the Patriot Act, for example, go uncontested. It's taken away our Fourth Amendment rights, and he has let it go uncontested. So where was he on that? It seems like he knows the constitutional law, but doesn't really care how it protects us. So, keep that in mind. He's going to keep, taking away. He may know the law, but he's not exactly going to enforce it, not for the good of us, anyways. So he was going on to say, he's bashing a lot of Republicans, saying, I'm no Republican. Obviously, I'm a libertarian. He's going on to bash Republicans, saying, here we are trying to stop terrorists from getting onto a plane or owning a gun, but the Republicans are totally cool with it. When in fact, he's talking about sugarcoating it. He can't talk about it straight and how it is, because then people would see how full of shit he is, and that they're trying to set things up. He's trying to set things up so that if you're on a no-fly list, which is arbitrarily created by a panel and committee of who the fuck knows, to potentially take away your rights. They can say, this person, they're involved in critical thought. They may be involved with terrorism as well. If they're able to think outside the box, who knows what they're capable of? I mean, Ted Kennedy, for fuck's sake, because there's another Ted Kennedy out there by the same name that had some kind of affiliation with, I don't know, Saudi Arabia or whatever. Ted Kennedy, the senator, wasn't able to fly for a while, and he had to fight that in court. So imagine how fun that'll be. And speaking of taking away your rights through little bullshit arbitrary laws like that, keep in mind, they have it so that if you have a felony, you can never possess a firearm for the rest of your life. So, say for instance you were caught urinating in public, that could be labeled as indecent exposure. That is a Class C felony. You will never be able to own a firearm now. So, and now you have Florida implementing a law like if you're caught with paraphernalia, if you're caught with a pipe, it could be a tobacco pipe, but for all they know, it could be used for marijuana purposes. That is also a felony now in the state of Florida. Now you can't own a firearm. So slowly they're starting to push you back into a corner. They aren't going to flip a switch and say, guns are gone, you're through. They're going to just keep nudging it. They're going to see how far they can push it until you push back. And then they start to ease off a little bit. And then whenever they start to get more of these mass shootings start happening, they encroach a little more. And then they back off whenever you push back. But every time you lose more and more of your rights to own firearms and defend yourself. So keep that in mind. That's what's been happening. And then through some of the laws he's trying to pass, trying to read off my list here. They actually have it. Okay, so they have it. So one of the laws he's trying to implement is that if you've ever been convicted or suspected, mind you, so you haven't even been put through the court of law, just like with the no-fly list, if you've ever been suspected of domestic violence, you can be reported and put on the no gun buy list. So again, you have yet another panel out there that can be out there and say, well, this person was heard yelling at someone else. They're possibly violent. They can never own a firearm, or at least for the time being. And then you got to go through yet even more paperwork to possess a firearm to protect yourself. So, these are the kind of things we gotta really pay attention to. So as far as policy he's trying, Barack's trying to implement here. Excuse me, Mr. Obama. All right. So something also that really, really irked me was the fact that he was talking about the shootings twice now that have happened in Fort Hood. All right, it's a military base. All right, being that I'm also in the military, I've seen a lot of how the security works at several bases. And the thing is, it could be a lot stronger. The thing is, I've been to several bases that could be easily overrun by street gangs, because we have meager forces that go, that are actually armed to do anything with small arms, but not everybody on base is armed. So if somebody were to roll in there, say like the gentleman or the guys in Fort Hood, and they start firing on people, well, they can't fire back at this guy because we're disarmed. We do not have the rights to roll on that base with firearms. So for him to use that as an example actually really pisses me off on a personal level, because it's like, you give me a gun and you will never get to use me as an example for a tragedy of why we should ban guns. All right, so stop dancing on the graves of the military, please, in that regard. He said before, Brock saying like, oh, I'm just trying to implement this little bit, which, I'll get into in a minute exactly what he's trying to implement. I'm just trying to put in this little bit to, try and tweak the Second Amendment a little bit, but here's the thing. At one point he said he's wanted to mirror the Australian gun control, which, if you remember, the Australians, they had everybody register their guns. Hey, we just want to register, so if you shoot somebody, we know where you live, and that sounds rational. But the thing is, they don't necessarily need that to track down who conducted murder, and it's not necessarily 100% reliable. But when it is reliable is when 2 years down the road, or however long necessary down the road, that you say, you know what, we're just going to ban guns completely. Well, now you have the addresses of everybody that ever bought a gun, and now you get to go house to house and collect those guns. So that is why, in case you're wondering, Barry, why we have a problem with registering our guns, is now you have our addresses, and now if you ever decide to get completely out of control, like, I don't know, say like you did with the wars in Iran, or rather Iraq and Afghanistan, Syria, and soon to be Iran, like you said you weren't going to do. If you do the same thing with gun control, oh, I'm not going to take away your guns, and then later on say, well, we got all this mass shootings, I got to take away your guns. We ain't got to worry about you taking away our guns. We can kind of keep them hidden from you. So that's what we're doing here. By the way, I don't have any guns, so don't come to my house and he'll try to take them. Scout's honor. I was never in Scouts, by the way. All right, so you go on to say, and this is another fun one, actually. You went to reference how if only we stuck to knives instead of guns, we'd have a controlled killing spree like in China, where not that many people died. The guy used a knife, and he's only able to kill a few people and injured a few hundred, but we're able to save those people. But in fact, this is actually the part where I cite that if somebody wants to do a mass killing, they can do it with whatever the fuck they want to do if they're so inclined to do. And so this instance in China that you're talking about is Old Barry. There's actually over 100 people that were knifed to death. And look it up. Don't take my word for infallibility. Look it up if you want to. Look up knifing spree in China. Over 100 people died in this knifing spree on a train. And you remember the old saying, never bring a knife to a gunfight. Remember, think if there was a guy that had a gun, they'd blast him right there as he stood before he got a chance to knife anybody else. Let alone the fact, you look at any instance where, say for instance, like you were thinking about committing a crime. Just put yourself in the shoes of this person. Say you got to commit a crime. You gotta break into somebody's house and steal some stuff because, say you need to feed your family or whatever. You need to get a fix or whatever. Are you seriously going to consider breaking into a house of someone that's armed with guns? The possibility of that? Are you going to consider that, or consider a job? Now consider again, if these people are completely unarmed, and the worst you have to worry about is getting your ass beat or getting a job, might you be more inclined to break into unarmed people's houses? Possibly. Okay, so and just to throw out some statistics here, here's some interesting stuff. 1 in every 4 people in Switzerland are actually gun owners, and only 41 homicides occurred with a gun in 2014 out of 8 million people. Okay, now consider again, in America, 37 to 40% of every household has a gun as of 2013. And 11,208 murders were committed out of 300 million people. Okay, so you can quickly do the math in your head and see that there's a big difference. There's a slight difference in the amount of people owning a gun, almost negligible. But as far as murders committed, there's like nearly 1,000% difference. I'm not very good at math. If you're watching this right now, you go and do it yourself, but you see there's a huge difference. And the thing is, our gun policies is not that dissimilar from Switzerland. Okay, the difference is a lot of these psychotropic medications going out there. I personally believe. If you got any other thoughts, otherwise I'd love to hear them. I seriously open-minded. This is part of why I make these videos. I want to hear your thoughts as well. But I feel it's a lot to do with the psychotropic medications going out there. A lot of this stuff's experimental, and if you read on the side effects, it leads to suicidal thoughts. Leads to homicidal thoughts, and you're talking about 1,000% difference. That's a huge difference. You got a lot of people murdering each other here, And, you know, taking away the guns obviously will not change that. A lot of people out there know that. Again, I'm making this video right now to point out the fact that, you know, if you aren't arming yourself with information, you'll find yourself prey to propaganda. So, you know, obviously this is propaganda. A lot of this is just anti-gun propaganda, but I understand that it applies in many other ways. We are constantly being barraged with propaganda, so just keep your minds open to that. Something else I wanted to point out, just a thought I had when I was hearing all this rhetoric from Barry. You know, I was just thinking, you know, every time gun control is implemented at the behest of the government, it is against the will of the people. You know, it's like it's always for your good. It's because he knows better, and you know, he's just waiting for you to catch up. But you know, here's the thing, man. If we had a problem with it, if we really had a problem with something, there'd be such an overwhelming consensus. He wouldn't have such difficulty implementing it that he had to go to the measures of full executive order. All right, so the fact that he had to go to full executive order to, which by the way, this is exactly what he's doing right here. It's he says anyone conducting business selling firearms must be licensed and must conduct background checks or face criminal prosecution. So basically, through his law, the way it's set up is that if you're caught so much as selling, like you could be selling one-on-one to another person, and if you're selling your pistol to, say, your neighbor, and you've known this guy for years and you trust him, you're like, this guy's good to go. If you aren't conducting a background check, and if you aren't licensed to do so under this law, you could be prosecuted. So, you know, again, it's not an on and off switch. It's a slow, gradual push towards pulling your guns away. And then he said also he's wanting to update the background checking system, and anyone suspected of domestic abuse will be added to the no-buy list, as I went over earlier. And he wants to implement more gun safety control technology. So he's talking about like making it so like there's electronic controls on these guns, and also ways that they can be tracked down through GPS. So not only are your guns registered, but now if you ever go anywhere, if you ever leave your house with it, for example, it could be tracked down. You know, again, this isn't necessarily saying that, you know, here it is, the end of days. It's just building the road towards it. As been said before, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And this is how it begins. It's one step at a time. It's not just a switch again. It's just one step at a time. One little infringement of your right at a time. And slowly it'll become the normalcy, and then they encroach a little more, and that'll become the normalcy, and they encroach. It's never the other way back. If you pay attention, when's the last time we got a little more freedom? It's been a few decades. So pay attention to this stuff, please. All right, so let me just make sure I've been over everything. Okay, so yeah, I guess that's about it. So, you know, again, thanks for tuning in. Hope to see you or have you again here soon. I really hope to get some conversations on with you. You know, just keep your eyes and mind open, and you know, we'll be keeping you posted. Cheers.